Okay, you guys, I am so excited for today's episode. This is one that happened pretty magically, I will say. I am joined by Rebekah Lipsky, and her practice, Rebekah Lipsky Counseling, is all about focusing on big life transitions and breakups and all the things that many of us have been through and will continue to go through. So, Rebekah, welcome to Seeing Other People.
Thank you so much. It's good to see you again. Yes, we met at the Harlem train station at a 8 a.m. Friday morning. So here we are
Yeah.
now.
Here we are now. Never expected that to lead to this, but I couldn't be happier that it did. And I'm so glad we connected. And I so appreciate you coming on to talk about, I think, such an important topic that, listen, we all go through life transitions and we all go through like traumatic events that kind of shake up our world. And no matter how much someone thinks they know about how to go through it, it completely like disrupts everything, every part of our life. And really flips everything upside down. And so the more we can all talk about it and normalize the crazy things that happen to us, the better we all are for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, to begin, I would love to hear how you got into being a therapist and what led you to doing what you're doing. And I know that's going to open a big can of worms.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always like to joke that my desire to become a therapist started at age 9. I had a
Okay.
friend in the fourth grade tell me that I should be a therapist when I get older because I give great advice. I don't know what I could have possibly been helping 9-year-olds with,
I was gonna
but
say, I
I
wish
guess
I knew what you were like, I can't go high enough on the swing or this person won't push me on the playground. Like, what could it have been?
I don't remember what I told them, but so that
I
like
love it.
it started there. But I've always loved helping people so much. Obviously, to be a therapist, there's so many skills that are needed to learn. There's so much knowledge that's needed to be acquired. But I just always felt like I don't know, I had the personality for the job, just the caring nature, the empathy, the desire to help people. And then my senior year of high school, I finally was able to take a psychology class and was like, okay, not only do I have the values that seem to make up a therapist, I actually have the interest in the subject matter. And then when I went off to college, I took a ton of psychology courses, majored in psychology, and just became so fascinated with it. And it all just really aligned. I went straight to graduate school after graduating from college. And yeah, just the passion continued to grow from there.
I love that, and I love that it's something that was always in you. I actually took um, this shortened version of this NYU course called Becoming You by Susie Welch recently, and it's all about, combining your values and your aptitudes to figure out what you should be doing with your life, and one of the things that we talked about in this class was how when by the time you're like elementary, middle school age, you actually know in your heart, like, you know what you should do with your life. And so many of us don't follow that because we do what we think is expected of us or what we think makes more sense to do. And we kind of ignore that young us voice in our head of like what we're really passionate about. But I love that it ended up being what you really were meant to do and what you did follow through on.
Yeah, no, that's so true. And I feel like so often we try to fit a job into us where we really should be fitting ourselves into a job. And that's kind of, I guess, how it panned out for me. Like I had a sense of who I was, what was important to me. Here was this field that could allow me to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So you pursued this after college, like straight away, or did anything happen in between?
Yep. So I went straight to graduate school. So I went to University of Rochester for undergrad. Absolutely loved it so much. Then I moved to Baltimore right after that to go to Johns Hopkins for graduate school. Yeah, everything just kind of happened one right after the other. And so I initially worked in a big outpatient clinic, part of one of the Johns Hopkins hospitals for a very long time. And then ultimately, very, very slowly moved into starting my own private practice, more so around COVID time. We all were home, virtual, seemed like a good opportunity. So, yeah, it's been gradual throughout, but yeah, kind of high school, college, graduate school, right into the field.
Got it. And so I know during COVID, there was also a lot going on in your personal life.
Mm-hmm.
Where should we begin?
Oh my goodness, where should we begin? So, in your introduction to me and my practice, I do now specialize in working with adults going through major life transitions. And that is because a few years ago, I myself went through three huge transitions at one time. The main one that we'll probably focus on today is that I actually called off a wedding and an engagement. This was all around spring 2022. I don't know why every time I say 2022, I feel like I'm saying a million. 20, I feel like I'm saying like eight numbers, but the year of 22. Um, but also at that time, I was leaving the job I'd been at for 5.5 years to try and go out on my own in private practice. And then, due to those things occurring at the same time, I decided to move to a new city. So, a lot was going on, but the pandemic, I think, definitely was, a catalyst for me making that transition job wise, but B, also some things that were going on in the relationship.
How long were you in this relationship at this point?
Yeah. 5.5 years. So literally I was at this
Wow.
job and in this relationship basically for the same amount of time.
Your entire life changed.
Yep. All at one time.
Oh my
Like
god.
literally all at one time. We'll get into it. But
Yeah.
when I decided to officially end the engagement was 2 days before my last day at that job. It was it was a lot.
You were like, "All right, this is all just gonna happen right now." Um,
Yep.
you know what? And we'll get into all the details, but I love this idea. You had posted this video around normalizing calling off an engagement and a wedding, and I think that is such a great way to put it and such an important thing to talk about because it is something that feels impossible. It is something that it's so not normalized that it actually stops people from doing it, even if they're so unhappy, even if they're depressed, even if they don't trust their partner, even if they're not excited for their wedding, they feel like, well, I'm already in too deep. The invitations have already been sent out. Like this would blow up my entire life. And so people don't do it and they end up in a marriage that they don't want to be in, which is one of the saddest things that you can possibly do to yourself. And so I love the way you put it of like normalize ending an engagement, normalize calling off your wedding because it's better to do that hard thing than to end up in a marriage that you're unhappy in.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's so, so true what you just said. And I struggled with it so much coming to that decision because not that I didn't know you were allowed to do that, but honestly, in a way, I didn't know you were allowed to do that. I thought that was only reserved for people in the Bachelor franchise. Um, but otherwise, I didn't know anybody who'd gone through it
Right.
personally. I wasn't hearing people talking about it. And while it's incredible, truly, that there are so many resources for people going through breakups and people going through divorces, like I Googled, it was so hard to find something that really spoke to this unique form of a breakup because it really, really is. It's each type is unique, and this one really is in its own way. And so I really appreciate you saying that. And yeah, I'm happy to be vulnerable always. And I just want to be so validating and normalizing. And yeah, for people to know that it is okay. And like you said, kind of so often people are not making that decision just to, again, they're in too deep and they stay in this marriage. And something that I work on so much with clients, whether it's with breakups or various life transitions, of course, is this idea that unfortunately in so many situations, either way you slice it, there's going to be emotional pain. If I call off this engagement and ooh, that level of pain was so high, so excruciating. But then there's also pain staying in something that you're really not happy with or something that's unsafe. And so I always say that both versions evoke pain, but one version, the former version, moves you forward at least. The other one just keeps you stuck. And so really helping people through that. And ultimately, I did unstick myself by doing that, but it was not a one and done. I mean, it was so difficult to do that. And it took a lot of time to come to that decision.
Yeah, I want to talk about how you made that decision. I imagine that was a huge mental battle and something that you really went back and forth on. But before we do that, can we back up a second? Like when you got engaged, what were you feeling then? Did you have any doubt in the back of your mind, or you were like, "This is my person. This is what I'm meant to be doing and who I'm meant to be with?"
Yeah, it's a good question because it kind of does lead into what ended up happening. So, kind of like I told you before we hopped on. So, for anybody listening, I plan to talk so much about my experience with calling off an engagement, generally what happened, just publicly for a variety of reasons. I don't share the specific details of what happened, but it was due to broken trust. And unfortunately, there had been a few bouts of a situation where I kind of found something out. Um, I ultimately ended it when I like fully found out what I needed to. But this first round was, I'm just trying to do the math, like 5 months before we got engaged. So that was actually really, really difficult. So we moved in together a year before we got engaged. So um, when that happened, I didn't know what to do. Like I was like, this just is a horrible experience. Do I stay with him? Do I not? I don't know. But then, again, you love somebody so much. Nothing like this had ever happened before. Okay, if we sit down and we really discuss how we're going to work through this, maybe this is the impetus for us becoming stronger than ever. So
Mhm.
I remember at our engagement actually feeling like, oh, he became the best version of himself I'd ever seen. And I think in some ways he did, but then unfortunately, other things continued that I still hadn't known about. But when we got engaged, I actually felt so sure. But I want to be candid about a big issue happened like
Mhm.
months before we got engaged. So there had been some doubt at that time, but then through whatever actions I had seen, um, I thought that everything was better and like amazing. That's what we needed to happen. There's no question
Yeah.
uh, until later on.
Ugh, that's so tough. I'm, like, feeling this, like, in my body as you're saying it because, I mean, eh, knowing that you were so sure on that day, like, this it was one of the best days of your life and so happy, and you felt like, "Okay, we did it, like, we got through this hard thing. We're going to make it, and this is incredible, and I found my person, and now we're engaged," and, you went through that period of celebrating with your friends and family and planning your future. I think that's, one of the hardest things about breakups in general is you're mourning the loss of what you thought your future was going to be. And this takes it to a whole new level of, you moved in together, you were engaged, you were planning your wedding. And for those who haven't planned a wedding yet, when you're planning a wedding, it's like really like all you can think about and talk about. Like it occupies like 90% of your brain capacity because it is just such a big thing with so many different things to do and plan. And I can't imagine the transition of going from, like, feeling so happy and on top of the world to then, months later, like, everything is falling apart.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so true. It's like, I don't know if you're a big roller coaster fan, but there's so many metaphors, right, to emotions being like a roller coaster. So I don't mean it in this sense right now, but just the ascending, right? And then you're like,
Mhm.
I made it, I made it, I made it. And then sometimes there's like a massive drop. I've never been on King to Ka, but sometimes it's like that. Other times it's like a little one and
And then
goes like
back up
that.
and yeah.
Yeah. So it was like that. And I had made it very clear, right? Because I just was saying to him, I was like, XYZ needs to happen in order for me to feel ready to say yes to an engagement. So those conversations had happened. But again, I thought I'd seen based on the actions being displayed, okay, like what needed to happen happened. And then, yeah, we got engaged October 2020. We were going to have like a 2-year engagement. So the breakup was March 2022.
Oh my
Still
gosh.
have trouble saying that year for whatever
Ugh.
reason. It never sounds
Well,
right.
a lot happened that year. It's okay. Your brain doesn't wanna say it.
Yeah, maybe that's it. For what it just sounds hard to say, but
Yep.
regardless.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, there had kind of been this until people can't
Yeah.
really see what I'm doing. It had been kind of wavy until it really like. went down a
Yeah.
slope, I guess, essentially,
Yeah.
is what I'm doing with my hands.
Well, no, it's funny that you brought up the roller coaster thing because I once said that, like, my ideal relationship is like the world's most boring roller coaster where like it's just going. It's just straight and there's like some little bits of ups and downs, but for the most part, like it's just smooth and consistent and like pretty predictable and not scary because
Yeah,
it's you know what to expect and you
yeah.
know how you're going to continue to feel. Okay, so year and a half goes by.
Mhm.
When did things start to take a turn?
So, I feel like the summer of 2021 thing we just started to have more problems, and the tough thing is as it was related to, again, I'm being vague on purpose, but the reason that
Yeah.
ultimately there was broken trust, but I I didn't know what the issues were attributed to. And that's I'm fine with it now, but that was always so hard for me at the time because like in my mind, I tried every single thing I could to help and make things better. And I didn't even know what I was trying to improve or what I was trying to help. And so that summer was pretty difficult. And then by the time fall 2021 rolled around, so a few months before, yeah, there just were like the new norm was having issues. And I remember feeling that way. Like we would celebrate when we had a good day or like a fun outing. And that seemed indicative of a problem because that had been the norm for so long, right? Like having an
Mhm.
argument or an issue was like, "Oh no, why are we doing this? We're usually so happy." So that shift I think was so significant and became consistent enough that I was like, well, I can't ignore that. But again, I love this person so much. We're planning a wedding. What am I really going to do? But by February 2022, so I canceled the wedding before the breakup actually happened. The breakup was 6 weeks after. So the wedding really was it really was so agonizing. Like I picked up my wedding dress in January. I had to drive an hour to DC to get it. I was in Baltimore at the time. I was numb. I had like no excitement. I was like resentful that I had to drive an hour to go pick up this dress and come back another hour. So right, like that was kind of telling. Um, but then my parents were gonna have to put down the second round of the deposit. And that was just crushing me every day. It made me so anxious, it made me so stressed. I was feeling so guilty. Like, I'm not sure. And just the thought of like letting money be put down, knowing how I was thinking and feeling was just eating me alive. And I'm so fortunate to have had such incredible support from my mom. And I was kind of letting her know how I was feeling. And she knew a little bit about the couple rounds of kind ofs.
Mhm.
And she flat out asked me, putting deciding what to do about the relationship to the side for a moment, meaning like, am I going to stay or am I going to leave? Do you feel ready to get married in September? So 7 months from this point. And immediately I said no. I wish I could capture for you truly the sense of relief that overcame my body. Like it was insane. Um, it truly felt like somebody or like multiple people came off and just like pulled this massive weight off of me. And I was like, whoa, okay, why couldn't you tell me this sooner, body? But it
Right.
was too, right, like, where have you been? And they're like, where have you been? We've like, thank you for making this choice. But it was too significant to ignore. So that was the first decision made to just see, okay, let's just kind of remove this from the equation at this point. Because, like you said, it does become the major focus of life, which is mostly very exciting. Unfortunately, for our circumstance, became not as exciting because of all the issues we started having. But it just was like, let's take the time and energy to pour it back into our relationship and what we need to do to rebuild and repair. And obviously, it was a devastating conversation. I mean, one of the hardest conversations ever, second to the breakup itself. But it wasn't out of nowhere. Like we'd been struggling so much that there had been a few times, not in a threatening way, but just I would say like I don't know if I could do this. So
Yeah.
it wasn't so blindsiding, but still, not what anybody wants.
I don't know if you saw, I was like almost started tearing up when you said like the relief that came when you said no out loud. Like I can't imagine like what it felt like to like have all that also like bottled up inside of you where like you didn't even fully like know how much of a relief it would be until you were able to say it, because I'm sure you wanted it to work so badly. And I think that wanting is what keeps so many people in relationships that they shouldn't be in, is because you want it to work. You believe in your partner. You know the potential they have to be the best version of themselves. You know how good the relationship has been before. And so the idea of ending it almost feels like giving up in a way, but oftentimes you have done all the work you can. Like you have really tried everything. And sometimes relationships, they're not all built to last. And two people aren't always right for each other or able to be their best selves for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it brings up certain things that I wanted to mention. So, two things. One, in my opinion, one of the most agonizing experiences and is when your head and heart just are not on the same page.
Mhm.
And I can talk more about how I like to support clients through that, but that's so much of what it was. Like you're saying, just this wanting. I'm so in love with this person. Exactly. I can spew out so many amazing times we've had together. Like, shortly we have it in us to find our way back. And I thought that we did in the 6 weeks between the called off wedding and the breakup. But again, I ended up finding out fully what I needed to, in ways that my trust had been broken and betrayed. But it's it's agonizing and it just completely throws you out of alignment. And so it does totally increase your stress, your overwhelm, your anxiety. I was I consider myself like a very genuine, authentic person. What you see is what you get. And I was faking so much. It was exhausting. Whether that was we had a dinner party to go to and we just had a fight and now we got to show up as though like, oh my God, we can't wait for our wedding. We're so excited. Or to my bridesmaids, yeah, so psyched for the bachelorette versus me being
Ugh.
like so guilty. Like, are people really going to buy plane tickets to come celebrate me when I don't know if I want to do this? It just really like disrupted all my inner peace. So again, I can talk more about the head and heart stuff. But the other thing I wanted to mention too, which is so hard, and this is one of the most A, disconcerting experiences I went through, but B, it was also really scary, that it became mutually exclusive to trust him or me. So what I mean by that is I could only trust one of us. So
Mhm.
if I trusted him, I was kind of abandoning myself. Like any suspicion I had or any like question, really? Like anytime I wanted to press harder, that meant I wasn't believing him. But I loved him and he's my partner and I'm choosing him. So, but if I went with me, right, and like, no, you're right, like trust your instinct. Well, then, as it turned out, right, because I left.
Yeah.
So that that was a scary experience, and that led to so much denial. It became like a complete default mode to just turn a blind eye. And then, like when I found out everything I needed to, my brain was like literally like I envision it like clinking a glass to make a toast. Like, okay, everybody, sit down. Are you ready to see everything for
Uh,
what it really was? And then I was like, oh my god. So
I'm
yeah,
picturing
that
Inside
was
Out and all of the emotions, like, going haywire.
yeah. Oh my god, I reference Inside Out all the time in session. They should sponsor me that
I love
movie.
it.
But um, so yeah, I want to mention that too because I think people come up against that a lot as well, right? Where it's like, but I love this person. They're my partner, as we know, and I'm sure so many people have said on your podcast, like love is not just a feeling, it's also an action. And you're
Mhm.
choosing to love, right? So it's like, well, if I'm choosing to love, then I'm choosing to trust. But then that led into a lesson
Yeah.
that love doesn't conquer all. And I don't say that to be cynical. I love to say that love conquers a lot because it does. But no, I can choose to still love, but I also was completely valid in saying, I can't trust you anymore, and
And
getting out.
at the end of the day, you also had to love yourself enough to choose yourself and to, choose to do what was ultimately right for you, for your life, for your happiness long term. And like you said in the beginning, like it was either going to hurt like hell then or hurt like hell for a very long time down the road. And I mean, I'm sure like what was the harder part? Like deciding to end it, communicating it to him, or telling everyone in your life that this was over?
Mm. Oh, it's such a good question. They're all so hard, but deciding to end it was just the hardest decision ever because communicating it to him in that moment, like it really almost was a three strikes you're out situation. Because again, I'd had these 2 rounds of the kind I kind of know what's going on, but regardless, like you've lied and my trust has been broken twice now. So right there's already cracks, and then fully finding out, which happened to just be the third time. Like I had said, if this happens again, like if I find out, like I can't do this anymore because it just wasn't safe anymore to just constantly worry. So when he told me everything that he told me, it's not that it was easy saying to him, okay, well then it's over. But again, it's like I'd communicated about that,
Mhm.
but just making that choice exactly like you said, like ultimately, do I love myself the most in this situation to do right by me, which is to no longer be with him? That's just an excruciating decision because, again, I very much was still in love with this person. And we lived together. We had a dog together. I still have the dog. We had a dog together, and they're just staying in that house. And then he wasn't there. It was the worst. Telling everybody, I'm so blessed truly to have incredible friends and family who just like wrapped themselves around me, both physically if they came to visit or emotionally. But I will admit that it was embarrassing. I felt embarrassed. um, I felt embarrassed sending the email to everybody that we were canceling the wedding because, again, I didn't know anybody who'd done that. And then but it was like, but we're okay and we're working on our relationship, and then it's like it didn't work. And
Mhm.
so ultimately, I knew everybody would support me. No one was going to judge me. Maybe it would very much pique curiosity, understandably, but it was embarrassing. And I, for the wedding specifically, to notify everybody, I also felt really guilty. I just felt like people have bought their hotel room or booked travel or just have been so excited. I felt like I was taking something away from everybody. But again, everybody was like, "You need to do what's right for
Yeah.
you." So, but it
Yeah.
was all really hard.
No, I mean, I am sure that felt like a mountain that, like, was just impossible to climb and get over,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, like, hotels can be canceled, flights, okay, you can't get your money back, you get flight credit and you use it again, like, I I guarantee nobody was mad at you for doing what was right for you. I mean, the people invited to your wedding are the people who love and support you the most, and so I'm sure they were, if anything, just concerned and, wanted to be there and make sure you were okay. I'm curious because I know you said you felt embarrassed. Do you think anyone hearing this information or reading that email was sitting there thinking, "Wow, that's embarrassing."
No. And, a very close friend of mine just went through this. And I remember getting the text and thinking, oh, she probably feels embarrassed right now just from that empathetic place. But as the receiver, I was like, but I really don't want her to because power to her, like, go her.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, I don't think they did. I think, yeah, everybody was proud. I've been continue to be met with really incredible adjectives that people have, brave, courageous. It kept like renewing my strength. But yeah, I don't think people would have thought that because, again, Now me being on the other end, I was like, no,
Yeah.
I don't see it that way. But I would understand.
Yeah. Yeah. As someone who's been on both sides of it now, of like going through it yourself and being, there to support a friend through it, how can friends support their friends who are going through this, whether it's calling off an engagement and a wedding, whether it's calling off a serious relationship where they lived with somebody, or just some big life transition where they feel like everything they knew and planned for is suddenly not what's happening. Like, what are the right things to say? Like, how did you want your friends to show up for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in no particular order, but one of the things that first comes to mind is I think it's so important for people to understand that this isn't just something that someone's going to get over and move on from quickly.
Yeah.
And sometimes things, we don't ever get over them. We just get so much better at getting through them, where they're just, a thing of the past that we overcame. But I think sometimes people don't put pressure like on, come on, let's be okay with this already. But I think sometimes, and I understand, I don't fault anybody, but maybe don't understand why the person going through the breakup, divorce, called off engagement is still struggling by whatever time frame that is. And what I want people to know is there's just so many layers of grief here. So, like you said, it's losing this future picture. It feels really unsettling and scary that this future image that was like pretty colored in, some parts of it are really colored in, other parts maybe have the outline, but it's like when we have kids, we'll color that in more, but there's an outline for it because we know we want kids. And then it just is like blank, or maybe not blank, but so blurred or
Mhm.
splattered, however, like that's really scary, and that's really devastating for so many people. You're grieving the past. So I, again, my trust was broken, but I have so many fond memories of that relationship. And so just grieving what was, whether that's how things were before everything took a turn, or it's just regardless of the good, the bad, I had that person that I got to cuddle with every night, or I still had that person and we had our routine of doing that. So there's grief like on in all tenses. Um, you're grieving the person themselves, and this idea of starting over is so challenging. And so there's just like so much that comes with the healing and processing of the breakup. But then if somebody's wanting to move on and get back out there and try to date again, that just brings up a whole other slew of difficult emotions,
Right.
the frustration, the comparison, the effort, the exhaustion of it. Like there really are just so many layers to it. And so when people are supporting their friend, that doesn't mean that 6 months later they need to find a brand new thing to say, just to really meet them with that understanding and that empathy that they're on their own journey and there really is no set timeline. um, I think something that we don't do enough that is totally okay, and I encourage to do, is we can ask the person we're supporting what they need from us. Do they need advice right now? Sometimes we just want to jump into it, right? But that's just like not what somebody wants to hear. So, for example, and again, I was met with incredible support. I know everybody that told me it's going to be okay, you're going to be okay, was coming from the best intention, but I hated hearing that.
Mhm.
It actually pissed me off because I felt like I was dying. I
Right.
knew I wasn't, but I felt like I was dying. I wailed like a dying animal. And so I think sometimes asking, like, are you looking for encouraging words? Are you looking for someone to just kind of be in the mess with you right now? Are you looking for me to just listen? Do you want me to give some advice of when I went through a breakup, right? It's okay to
Mhm.
ask. Do you want me to come over and you can cry on my shoulder? Do you want me to come over and we can watch the funniest movie you ever made? So knowing that it's really not a one size fits all thing, and each person is going to need something different, but um it goes such a long way to just here and there send texts that you're thinking of the person. So again, sometimes I didn't need anybody to take my problem away or tell me what to do, but just knowing that I'm in someone's thoughts and in someone's heart, again, just like poured back into my cup truly. So yeah, those are just some examples. I mean, there's so many things, but that's what comes to mind
Yeah.
right now.
No, I love all of those, and I love the idea of asking, like, "What do you need from me?" And, like, is it do you want this or do you want that? I think there's so much power in that. I also think there's a lot of power in telling, from if you're the person going through it, like, you're allowed to tell your friend what you need if you know what you need. If you know that hearing advice is going to piss you off, you can say, "I love you. I don't want advice right now. I just want someone to talk to and someone to like nod their head and listen and to say, yeah, that really fucking sucks." You're allowed to say that. I was talking to a listener earlier today who, he's been going through a breakup and it happened towards the beginning of the year. He's still struggling with it. And that's, like you said, like that's totally normal. And, he was feeling his feelings over the weekend and he texted his friend and said, "I'm a little drunk. I'm like really feeling it right now. I'm going to text you everything that I'm feeling so that I don't text my ex." And that's a great thing to do too. Like lean on your friends, rely on them. They're there for you in whatever way you need. But your friend might not know at on a Saturday at 2 p.m., "Oh, I should text them so that they tell me everything they're feeling so they don't text their ex." Like you do have to, you know, put it on yourself sometimes to do what you need to do.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I co-sign all of that. Yes, and I really encourage people to reach out to their support system and be vulnerable. It's truly okay and it's needed. And kind of like with the embarrassing thing we talked about before, I mean, I never shied away from reaching out on my own, but I often did feel like a burden, which was a hard thing to feel. But from the other side, when I've ever been there to support a friend going through a tough time, I never once viewed them as a burden. Like I was like, okay, this is what I've been training. I've been training as a good friend to show up when, unfortunately a friend has fallen in some way. And I remember a couple of my best friends at the time said, we're never meant to go through like the highs at the same time and the lows at the same time. I mean, it's amazing if we are going through all highs at the same time, but in
Yeah.
terms of the lows, like some of us are just going to be in better places and that makes them better equipped at that moment or have more bandwidth to help the one again that's more fallen and vice versa. And, I think what was hard for me is that I'm always that friend that is just so giving and like I'm there, I'll be the advice giver, I'll be the listener. And I wasn't at capacity at all to be
Mhm.
that friend. And I felt like I was just taking and taking and taking versus really being able to give. But so much of my life prior to that time, I was doing both. And now, and for a while now, I've been able to give back. So we get back up. But so I want to normalize if anybody feels that way too, but absolutely agree with what you said that it's okay to reach out on your own when you need something because people aren't mind readers.
100%. What about when it comes to, moving forward and having these feelings of like, okay, I did this really hard thing, but now the rest is still hard too. I still have to, you know, figure out who I am without this person. I still have to, I mean, you also left your job of 5.5 years at the same time. Like you fully had one life. And I mean, listen, like you still stayed the same in many ways, you changed, but you're still you. But finding that you again is really hard. So, what advice would you give your former self or your clients or anyone else going through this of how to, rediscover yourself and rebuild your life back up? Because that I think is one of the hardest parts about going through a breakup or a big life change.
Absolutely. I have a few things that come to mind. So, one thing is something that I remained grounded in, even though it was so difficult, is that if I made this difficult decision to leave this relationship because I knew what I needed, then I could find what I'm looking for because I know what I need. And knowing that that foundation was going to keep guiding me and driving me and knowing what I need was rooted in my values. I do a ton of values work with clients, kind of like we talked about before with the job, right? How can we
Mhm.
figure out who you are and you know, go fit into something. So that was something that I really tried to remain anchored to. That again, even on the days which were there were plenty, mostly really painful days, lots of crying. I held on to that, and right, because again, it's if you're gonna upend your life, there's a reason. Sometimes things happen completely unforeseen that uproot our life. But these were my choices. So I'm like, if I'm choosing to do this, even though it's difficult, there's a reason here. And so that could guide me to the next thing. Um, Another thing is alone and lonely are not inherently the same thing. So being alone can make you feel lonely 100%. But you know, I kind of got to this point with myself where I was like, okay, sure, I am alone. I am literally physically by myself, which as an only child, I'm used to that. That's no sweat off my back. But you know, it's valid to feel lonely. I felt lonely plenty of times, but same thing with that idea of like it's painful either way. One moves you forward, one keeps you stuck. It was like if right now I'm alone either way, I can suffer in being alone
Mhm.
or I can be alone in a meaningful way. And so one of the things I did was I used to be a dancer. I wasn't dancing in Baltimore just because I could never find a studio that I liked, but I had moved to Philly. I don't know if I said that yet, but eventually I moved to Philly because I was like, I don't have a job here. I don't have a relationship. I'm out. And I found
Really
this.
really doing the 360 life reinvention.
Yeah, I was like, let's just keep it going at this
I love
point.
it.
Like, why?
Listen, why not? Why not? I'm sure that also helped you so much in terms of moving forward.
Absolutely. And yeah, so I found an incredible dance studio and I got back into dance. I went on a solo trip to Ireland. I'd never traveled alone abroad before. And then I went on like another little solo trip later. So I just really leaned into, I want to get into a relationship again. I will do what I can to do that. And I will do that when I'm ready. But right now, I have this time. I get to choose what I do with it. And so I really just tried to harness the control that I had access to, which helped me build myself back up and build up some confidence and just know too that like there is so much more to life. I never was that person that felt like my partner is my only and my everything. I've had a very uh, full life of so many facets, but they are a huge part of your life and they are also your partner in life. So I
Mhm.
think just developing that with yourself to show like as Miley Cyrus says, I can hold my own hand. I can.
Mhm.
I'm doing it right now.
Yeah.
So, um, but that song came out after everything, but it solidified. Um, but yeah, so certain things like that. And I mean, of course, I'm going to say this, but I really do recommend working with a therapist if that is something that you feel
Absolutely.
called to do, because I myself was working with a therapist, which was so helpful just to have that designated space for you to feel all of it. And I also just didn't allow myself to avoid the feelings. I certain situations, right? I'm not going to get on my therapy sessions when I'm counseling and make it about me and sob. Like I know how to put it away when I need to, but I kind of would like develop these lines for myself where I'd be like, well, if I'm crying, it's nothing new. To just kind of relate to it differently. So instead of, oh my God, why are you crying again? Like, what's wrong with you? I just was like, yeah, cool. Well, that tracks. Like,
Yep.
do what you got to do, girl. So you can change that relationship too, just with your feelings to let them move through you
Yeah.
more
Yeah.
compassionately.
I think so often we try and, we wanna be in a rush to get through it, and
Mhm.
so after a few weeks or a few months, if we're still hurting, if we're still feeling the pain, we almost get, like, mad at ourselves, like, "Why haven't I processed this yet? Why
Yeah.
haven't I healed? Why haven't I, found the next like, my new person if that person wasn't my person? Like, why am I still thinking about my ex?" But they were such a big part of your life, like, there's so much more to it, and healing is such a long process, and
Mhm.
the more you put off feeling your feelings, the longer it's going to take. And so I love
Mhm.
that you're like, "Okay, I'm crying. That tracks. I'm hurt. Like, I'm upset. This sucks. I think that is a huge reframe. And it is so important to let those, like you said, like pass through you. And I want to go back to what you said about feeling lonely versus alone and point out that you can also feel lonely when you're in a relationship.
Yeah,
I'm sure you
100%.
felt really lonely
Mhm.
many times.
Yeah, that's such a yeah, you can feel lonely in a crowd.
Yeah,
It's so
absolutely.
true. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, one last question before we start to wrap up, but for anyone, any of your clients or anyone that you talk to who might come to you and say, like, I can't decide if I should stay or if I should go, regardless of, if they are just in a relationship or if they live together or engaged or married, like whatever phase they're in, from your personal experience and your expertise, how would you help them navigate coming to that conclusion one way or another?
Mhm. It's a good question. So, I do a lot of focusing around needs. And I acknowledge that it can be very difficult at times to differentiate between what's just a want, what's just a nice to have versus a fundamental need. But I'll do that work with clients to first just see, like, when it comes to a relationship, when it comes to a fulfilling, happy life, like, what do you need? And kind of mapping out, is that being met? Is that being met at all? Is that being met effectively? Is that being met to some degree? Okay, it is. Do you think that there's really true, effective, realistic way where that can improve, where that small degree can be met more, and kind of just help people? Because as a therapist, I obviously can't tell anybody what to do, but it's giving them, right, the information on their own life, or pulling out the information, reflecting it back that they can then look at. So that's something that I'll do. I'll of course just check in with people on how they're feeling, right? So kind of like I said, in my experience, what became the new unfortunate norm was, oh, we're celebrating when we like had a great day and no problems came up. And so I think also, it sounds very scientific, but it's true, like kind of collecting the data in a way, just on consistently, how are you feeling? Not just in an emotional way, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm this, but inner peace wise, safety wise. Just again, like those are so important. So, really just trying to explore that and letting people know I'm here to help them decide what's best for them. And if it is leaving, just doing a lot of empowerment work there. And that's why I really moved my practice into this focus, because I not only made my life different, I elevated every part. So now I live in New York City. I've been here a year and a half. I Spoiler alert, well, not spoiler alert, but I am in a relationship now, and I have been for a year, and it's more than anything I could have wanted, like truly. Like every need is met, and everything I wanted, I didn't know, or everything I've gotten, I didn't know were things I wanted until I was like, "Oh, you play 3 instruments? Sure, I guess now I want that." But so I value so much being able to say I can not only personally attest to the challenges, but also the triumphs of it. So really just helping people recognize their own resilience, even from past experiences, to show you will be okay, and you also can get yourself to better should you make that choice, if you don't think this is if you think there's something better for you. So, but it's tough. It's so tough. So
It's hard, but it's definitely easier having someone like you sharing what you've been through and being a sounding board as a therapist to, help someone through it. So thank you for being here and for the work that you do. And just, yeah, I so appreciate you opening up. Again, I can't imagine what it was like to go through that, but it's so beautiful to see how you've come out on the other end, like you said, like so much better for it and so much stronger. And, you have a beautiful full life. You had a full life before, you have an even better full life now with more of your needs met. And it's just amazing to see. So thank you. Before I let you
thank
go,
you.
yeah, what is the best piece of dating or relationship advice you've ever received or have to give?
Oh my goodness. Ooh, best piece of dating advice. So I like to say that when you are dating to find your right partner, to try your best to keep your head and heart in the room at the same time, because again, falling out of that alignment is really, really difficult. And also sometimes we get into things where we're like, I feel so infatuated with this person, but like, I think there's all those red flags, but like, I'm too in it now, I love them. Or right, like they check off all these boxes, but I don't know that I feel it. So you deserve to really like and ultimately love, be in love with the person you're with, and feel at peace and feel at ease and feel happy with them. And you deserve to be in a partnership with somebody who, again, fundamentally aligns with the type of partner you not only want to be as well, but what you need to receive from a partner and what kind of life you want to create with a partner. And I help people with that, but that is what led me to elevating the type of person that I ended up with. So there's so many I could say. I could not choose one, but we'll start with that.
No, that was
And work
amazing.
with me to learn more.
Yeah, so perfectly said. And for those who are interested in working with you, where can they find you, and are you accepting new clients?
Yes, I am accepting new clients. So I'm licensed in New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania, and I have what's called a telehealth registration in Florida. So I can see anybody in those states virtually, but I do offer in-person sessions on Wednesdays in Manhattan. I have a website, RebekahLipskyCounseling.com. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes, but I spell
Yeah.
Rebekah a bit differently. I have an Instagram account called @ReflectWithRebekah because I am a sucker for alliteration. So yes, I'm accepting
2022.
new individual clients. Yeah. No, I'm not even going to try to say it. I've maxed out on that number today. But yeah, so I'm accepting individual clients, and I just want to mention too that I will soon be launching actually a group for women who have gone through a called off engagement. That is whether you've called off the engagement or your partner called it off. So like we said at the beginning, it's not talked about enough. It's so much more common than people realize. So I really just want to provide more of a group space for that. But individually, I work with people going through a wide array of life transitions. So I think those are the main channels. Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I will have that linked in the show notes. And Rebekah, definitely send me the information for that group when you launch it, because I would love to share it and get it out there for anyone who follows me or anyone who knows somebody who would be perfect to join it. So thank you again. And thank you. Shout
Thank
out
you.
Metro North, Harlem, 125th Station for making this all possible. I'm seriously so glad we connected.